I moved to a quiet neighborhood a few days ago. I was 32 and looking for peace after a chaotic city life. I thought living in an old house in a cul-de-sac would help me focus on my graphic design work. At first I was excited. The quiet felt nice. The houses all looked the same, which gave me a sense of calm. But soon I realized I didn't know what I had gotten myself into. The first few days were normal. I set up my space and worked on my projects, but on my second night I noticed some things were missing. A spoon, a mug. Just small things. I tried to convince myself I had misplaced them. I needed to pay more attention, I thought. As the days went by, things changed. I began to hear strange sounds. Late at night there was scratching from above, maybe from the attic. I didn't imagine it at first. Then came the tapping on my windows. I peered outside, but all I saw was darkness. The houses around me were still. Something felt very wrong. I started to see shadows darting past my windows. They were quick and vanished before I could figure out what they were. My heart raced every time I saw them. I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me, but I felt eyes on me, watching. It was unsettling and made me uneasy. The neighbors had been friendly when I first moved in, but soon they avoided me. I caught them whispering, their voices dropping as I walked by. I felt my stomach twist. Did they know something I didn't? I decided to ignore it, but the feeling stuck with me. One night, the scratching grew more intense. It was urgent now. I lay in bed, my heart pounding. It felt like it was an animal, but dread crept in. The tapping at the windows turned into a rhythm, like someone wanted to get in. I pulled the blanket around me, but it did nothing for my fear. Later I took the trash outside. The street was still and I glanced up at the windows. No lights were on. My heart sank as I saw a shadow move behind a curtain. I shook my head, trying to clear it. Maybe it was nothing. But deep down I knew it was more. Back inside, I locked the door. But it didn't help. I stood in the kitchen, fear rising in my gut. Then I heard it again, a soft knock at my window. This time the chilling realization hit me. It wasn't just an empty house I was scared of. Something was hiding in the dark corners of my new life. I took a deep breath and turned slowly to the window. My heart pounded in my chest. Whatever was out there was still watching. I didn't know how to escape. The quiet had become unbearable. I waited, unsure of what would happen next. I felt trapped. The next morning I woke up groggy and anxious. I needed answers. Trying to shake off the night's fear, I decided to get some fresh air. Maybe I just needed a walk around the neighborhood. I left the house, my pulse still racing from what felt like night terrors. I walked down the quiet street, the same identical houses surrounding me. Everyone still seemed to be hiding behind closed doors. I approached the neighbor to my left, Mrs. Wilkins. She had seemed the friendliest, and I hoped she might offer some insight. "Good morning," I called out, forcing a smile. She turned slowly, her expression cautious. "Morning. You're up early." I sensed a hesitation in her voice. "Yes, just taking a stroll." I tried to casually mention the noises I'd been hearing. "Have you lived here long? Do you ever hear strange sounds?" Her eyes widened for a fraction of a second, but she quickly masked her surprise. "Oh, you know how old houses can be. They creak and settle. It's nothing to worry about," she said, glancing around as if expecting someone to overhear. I nodded, but felt her words didn't match the concern in her eyes. Something was off. I pressed on. "And the neighbors? They seem distant." She hesitated again, chewing her lip. "People around here just keep to themselves. It's nothing personal." Then she abruptly changed the topic. "You should join us for the block party next Saturday. It'll be fun." I wanted to agree, but my gut told me something was wrong. I excused myself and continued my walk. The streets felt emptier without her chatter, and my unease loomed larger. By mid-morning, I returned home. I felt the urge to check the attic after last night's scratching. I climbed the creaky stairs to the door that led up, trying to suppress my fear. I grabbed a flashlight and pushed the door open. The attic was dark and musty, every shadow seeming to morph as I stepped inside. I swept the flashlight beam across stacks of old boxes and cobwebs. My hands trembled as I searched, but each box offered only dust and silence. Then in the far corner, something caught my eye. I shuffled closer, and my heart raced. It was a small, cracked mirror lying among the clutter. Curious, I picked it up, wiping away layers of grime. Suddenly I felt a chill run down my spine. The reflection revealed not just my face, but something dark looming behind me. I jerked around, but I was alone. Nobody was there. I turned back to the mirror, my breath hitching. The figure in the reflection was gone, but I could still feel its presence. Panic coursed through me. I dashed down the steps, heart pounding, the mirror clutched tightly in my hand. As I reached the last step, I froze. From the corner of my eye, I saw movement in the living room. Someone was walking past the window. I pressed against the wall, trying to stay hidden. My mouth went dry. I didn't want to see who it was. Then I heard a low whisper from outside, words I couldn't make out. I dared to peek through the curtains, heart racing. What I saw sent chills down my spine. A figure stood in my yard, staring directly at the house, shrouded in shadow. I felt the air grow thick with tension. I was no longer just an observer in this strange neighborhood. I was part of something darker. And then, just like that, the figure turned and disappeared into the trees. The next day I felt the weight of unease settle deeper in my chest. I couldn't shake the image of that figure from my mind. I spent the morning pacing the floors of my home, the cracked mirror lying on the kitchen table, a constant reminder of the chilling reflection I had seen. Trying to occupy myself, I decided to venture out again. Maybe I could gather more information, confirm if I was losing my mind or if there truly was something off about this place. This time, instead of walking the neighborhood, I headed to the local store. I needed a distraction. As I stepped inside, the bell above the door jingled, but the atmosphere was eerily quiet. The shelves were stocked neatly, yet the aisles felt almost too empty. I wandered over to the small section of fresh produce. The woman behind the counter glanced up, but quickly averted her gaze, as if afraid to meet my eyes. I picked up an apple, wanting to make small talk, but her silence was unnerving. "Do you know if there's a block party this weekend?" I finally asked, trying to break the tension. She nodded, barely making a sound. "Yeah, Mrs. Wilkins is organizing it," she muttered, still not looking my way. Her hands were fidgeting with a cloth as if she were cleaning an invisible spot. I sensed there was more to say, but I didn't press. Instead, I made my way to the checkout, feeling the weight of the woman's silence linger. After paying for the apple, I slipped outside, the unsettling encounter leaving me feeling more anxious than before. Back home, I decided I needed to confront my fear. I grabbed the mirror and examined it closely. There were scratches on the surface, almost as if someone had tried to carve something into its frame. I turned it around and found a faint, nearly unnoticed engraving along the edge. A name? Or maybe a date? I squinted. It was an E, followed by what looked like a R. I put the mirror down and grabbed my phone. I began to search for information on the house and its history. My fingers trembled as I scrolled through old records. I found some snippets about the neighborhood, the original builder, past families, and some incidents that seemed vague, but gave me chills. Then I stumbled across a name that stopped me cold. Ernest Blackwood. He'd lived here decades ago, but the details of his life were blurred by time. Just as I was about to dig deeper, a loud knock sounded at my door, echoing through the silence of my home. My heart jumped. I cautiously peeked through the peephole. I saw the silhouette of a man framed against the porch light. It wasn't Mrs. Wilkins. I hesitated, but finally opened the door. Can I help you? The man's face was shadowed, but his voice was calm. I need to speak with you about the house. My pulse quickened. I took a step back. Who are you? He hesitated, his eyes scanning the room behind me, and for a moment I feared he could see the cracked mirror. I was a friend of Ernest, he said slowly, and I think you found something you shouldn't have. Panic surged within me, and I felt the reality of my situation start to twist. I was in way over my head. I backed up instinctively, keeping my distance from the stranger. What do you mean? I asked, trying to sound braver than I felt. What's so special about this house? He stepped forward, the porch light illuminating his features slightly. I could see grey hair at his temples and deep lines etched into his face. There are things here, things that don't belong in the light of day. His tone shifted, low and serious. Ernest didn't just live here, he didn't leave willingly. My heart raced. A chill ran down my spine. Who exactly are you? I repeated, eyeing him suspiciously. Sebastian, he replied, extending a hand halfway as if we were to shake. I came to warn you. I've seen what this place can do. It holds secrets, and it can reach out to those who dig too deep. I swallowed hard. The idea of secrets made me think of the mirror again, the scratches still vivid in my mind. What do you know about Ernest? Ernest was obsessed with the past, he said, glancing over his shoulder. He tried to unearth something that was never meant to be found, and... He hesitated, choosing his words carefully. He paid a price. What kind of price? I pressed. Sebastian's gaze dropped to the ground, and for a moment I thought he wouldn't answer. It took him, he finally whispered. He disappeared. They say he was swallowed by the house itself. I felt heat rush to my face as anger mixed with fear. That's ridiculous. You think I'm going to believe that? His eyes hardened. It was all true to those who lived it. I grew up here, I've seen things. Shadows, whispers. The fewer people know of the house's history, the better, but you're already in too deep. I shook my head, trying to dispel the creeping dread. I just want to know what's going on. You need to leave, he said firmly, his voice now urgent. You need to just walk away from this place. But something inside me resisted. I couldn't simply walk away. I had felt the pull of unanswered questions. I can't just leave. I want to understand. The shadows shifted around him. I noticed a flicker of movement behind him, something darting towards the door. I glanced back at Sebastian, but he wasn't paying attention. I turned my head to get a better look, and that's when I saw it. A small, pale figure peering at me from the side of my house, its eyes reflecting a dim glow like two tiny lanterns. Panic gripped me tightly. What is that? I stammered, pointing. Sebastian turned abruptly, but the figure vanished in an instant. You have to listen to me, he urged, a look of terror crossing his face. You shouldn't have stayed here. Then everything went dark. A loud crash echoed from inside my home. I whipped around to see the mirror had fallen from the table, shattered glass littering the floor like a starry sky turned to chaos. What's happening? I shouted, my voice lost in the rising tide of fear. But before Sebastian could respond, the power flickered and died, shrouding me in the weight of darkness. I could hear my heart thudding in my ears. Behind me, I felt the air shift, as if something was moving closer. Someone or something was in the house. I stumbled backward, feeling the shards of the broken mirror crunch under my feet. The darkness felt heavy, like a blanket that wrapped around me, suffocating and tight. Sebastian? I called, my voice trembling, but there was no response. Fear twisted in my stomach. I had to get out of there, but I couldn't just abandon the room filled with unanswered questions. I took a cautious step forward. My phone buzzed in my pocket, the screen illuminating my surroundings for a brief moment. I scanned the room, the shadows flickering like silhouettes against the walls. Stay calm, I whispered to myself. Just then, I caught a glimpse of something moving along the hallway. It was quick, just a flash of white darting into the darkness. My heart raced. I wasn't alone. I crept toward the hallway, forcing myself to breathe steadily despite the pounding in my chest. The floor creaked beneath my footfalls, echoing in the silence. As I reached the end of the corridor, the faint outlines of a door caught my eye. Something was pulled, almost like a whisper beckoning me from the other side. I hesitated. The door was slightly ajar, inviting yet foreboding. Taking a deep breath, I pushed it open, the hinges groaning in protest. The room inside was dusty, filled with old furniture and shadows that seemed to breathe. There, against the far wall, was a dusty bookshelf. My curiosity piqued. I stepped inside, the air stifling, as if years of secrets pressed against me. I ran my fingers across the spines of the books, their titles faded and unreadable. But one book stood out, a leather-bound volume that felt different. It practically hummed under my touch. I pulled it from the shelf and opened it. The pages were yellowed with age, filled with scrawled notes and erratic handwriting. My heart dropped as I read a familiar name, Ernest. My hands shook as I turned the pages, revealing diagrams and sketches of the house, each one indicating hidden chambers and secrets beneath the floorboards. Ernest, I muttered. What were you looking for? Suddenly a chill swept through the room, and I felt the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. I turned quickly, the unsettling feeling growing more intense. That's when I saw it again. A glimpse of the pale figure standing at the entrance of the room, watching me. Its eyes glowed eerily in the dark. "Who are you?" I whispered, but the figure vanished the moment my voice broke the silence. I was losing my grip on reality. First the mirror, now this ghostly presence. Things were spiraling too fast. I slammed the book shut and clutched it tightly to my chest. I had to find Sebastian. He was the only one who could help me understand. With a sense of urgency, I dashed back through the hallway, skirting around the shards of glass. But as I approached the front door, it slammed shut with a deafening bang. My breath caught in my throat. Desperate, I turned to see shadows undulating against the walls, converging on me as if they were alive. "I won't let you take me," I shouted, panic rising within me. I glanced back towards the stairs, torn between running deeper into the house or attempting to escape into the night. The shadows stretched and twisted, closing in. Then I heard it, a low, rumbling whisper that echoed, filling the space around me. "You've awakened us. You must choose." My heart dropped as I frantically searched for a way out. There was no turning back now. I suddenly realized that I had only scratched the surface of what this house held. I had to confront whatever was lurking within its depths, or it might consume me, and I was running out of time. As the shadows swirled closer, I felt an overwhelming sense of dread wash over me. The darkness was suffocating, and all options seemed to vanish. I had to move. Without thinking, I sprinted towards the staircase. My heart raced as I bolted up the creaking steps 2 at a time. I could hear the whispering echoing behind me, taunting as I climbed. It felt like fingers tugging at my clothes, urging me to slow down. I reached the top and skidded to a halt in a narrow hallway, my breath coming in ragged gasps. "Sebastian, where are you?" I shouted. The echoes faded, swallowed by the oppressive silence. I scanned the empty hallway, the dim light barely illuminating the drab wallpaper, which seemed to pulse like a living thing. There had to be somewhere to hide, somewhere to gather my thoughts. I spotted a door at the end of the hall. It looked almost like the one from my earlier dreams, the one shrouded in fog and whispers. I hesitated for a second, glancing over my shoulder at the staircase. The shadows were still lurking just out of sight. I twisted the doorknob and pushed the door open, feeling both anxious and relieved. Inside, the room was dark, save for a faint glimmer coming from a single window. The air was thick with dust, but I could make out an old desk cluttered with papers and a single candle. I walked over to the desk, my palms clammy, and felt an almost magnetic pull toward the candle. I needed light. I reached for the candle, fumbling with it in my hands. To my surprise, it was still warm. Someone had been here recently. My heart raced anew as I lit the wick, the flame flickering to life and casting dancing shadows around the room. As the light spread, I noticed something on the wall, a large map of the house, much like the sketches in the book. But this one was different. It was dated, yellowing at the edges, and featured marks in red ink. I traced the lines with my fingers, an unsettling feeling creeping up my spine. They showed passages leading to various places beneath the house. I had to know more. I scanned the table again and found a thin leather journal buried beneath the papers. Flipping it open, I was greeted by more of Ernest's frantic writing. "They are restless," it said. "Something is hidden deep. If it awakens, there will be no escape." An icy grip of fear coiled around my heart. This was bigger than I'd imagined. Something was indeed buried in this house, and it wasn't just secrets. It was a warning. I closed the journal, my hands trembling, the weight of the knowledge heavy on my mind. Just then, a crash echoed from the hallway, jolting me from my thoughts. I froze, breathing rapidly as the sound rolled closer. Someone or something was in the house with me. My instincts screamed at me to run, but I stood frozen, lost in a mix of terror and curiosity. Another crash rang out, followed by footsteps, heavy and erratic. I had to make a choice. I could no longer evade the forces at play here. I needed answers, and I had to confront what lurked within the shadows. As the door swung open violently, my heart dropped. In the dim light, I saw a dark figure standing in the entryway, and I knew this was only the beginning. And then it spoke. "You've disturbed our peace." I stepped back, my mind racing. The figure was shrouded in darkness, its form almost blending into the shadows surrounding it. Panic surged through me and I struggled to speak, my words tangled in fear. "Who are you?" I managed to ask. "You've awakened us." The voice was low and raspy, sending chills down my spine. The figure shifted slightly, revealing more of its outline. It appeared to be cloaked, a tattered robe hugging a thin frame. Its eyes glinted like shards of glass in the candlelight. I searched for an escape route. The map on the wall loomed in my mind. I didn't want to confront whatever this was. I wanted to hide, to run back down the stairs and away from the horrors waiting within these walls. But disbelief propelled me to stay. "What do you want?" I pressed, even as my heart urged me to flee. A laugh echoed through the room, hollow and haunting. "What do we want? Don't you already know?" The figure stepped closer, and I could see faint shapes clawing at its robe. Ghostly remnants of another time. I had studied enough tales of hauntings to know the warning signs, yet the fear still gripped me tight. "I just want to leave. I didn't mean to disturb anything." My voice wavered, uncertainty drenching each word. "You cannot leave," it hissed, "not until the truth is revealed." With each sentence, it seemed to draw closer, and my instincts shouted at me to fight or flight. I glanced at the window, the darkness outside beckoning, but it felt like an illusion. A wayward belief that safety lay just beyond. Suddenly the candle flickered violently, the flame threatening to extinguish. I turned to the journal, desperate to find something, anything that would explain what was happening. But there was no use. The words seemed jumbled. It was as if the house itself had come alive, twisting my thoughts and intentions. "Show me," I blurted out, startling even myself. Despite everything, I felt an unstoppable urge to confront the mysteries that haunted this place. "Show me the truth." For a moment the figure paused, regarding me with an intensity that paralyzed the air. Then it pointed towards the floor in front of it. Dig deep. Only then will you understand. With that, the shadows around it surged, thickening as the figure began to fade, its laughter mingling with the whispers I had heard before. The echo of its presence filled the room, prolonging my horror. I stood there, trembling and too overwhelmed to respond. Digging? Digging where? A breath caught in my throat. The map. The red lines traced paths deep below the house. My mind raced with implications. Was there something buried beneath the floor? My heart pounded with fear, but curiosity gnawed at me fiercer. I needed a clearer answer, yet dread lurked close behind, whispering fears of what I might find. The whispering surged again, louder this time, and then stopped. Silence settled like a thick fog. I looked down at the hardwood floor beneath my feet. It felt solid, unyielding, yet a flicker of intuition urged me forward. With trembling hands I knelt, scanning for any sign of a loose board or indication that something lay hidden. That's when I saw it, a small crack, barely noticeable, running along the edge of a floorboard. A mix of terror and anticipation surged through me. What awaited below? Did I dare pry it open? Before I could second-guess myself, I took a deep breath and began to pull at the board. The heaviness of this moment fell upon me like a blanket, and as the board creaked and came free, I had only one thought. I wasn't prepared for what might come next. As I pulled the board away, a rush of cold air escaped from the opening. It brushed against my skin, icy and unsettling. I hesitated, staring into the darkness beneath the floor. Was it just a void? Or was something lurking there, waiting for me? The floorboard clattered to the side and I peered closer. The light from the candle barely reached into the darkness, but I thought I saw a glimmer of something metallic, half buried in the dust. My heart raced as I reached down, fingers trembling, and grabbed what felt like a handle. With a firm tug, I pulled it free. It was an old, tarnished box, small and ornate, engraved with strange symbols that seemed to flicker in the candlelight. The air felt electric around me, a palpable tension growing like a storm. I could almost hear whispers drawing closer, pulsating beneath the hum of silence in the room. "What do you hold, little one?" A voice purred, still and sinister. I nearly dropped the box in shock. The figure had vanished, but its presence lingered. I stood frozen for a moment, torn between the need to flee and the need to know. I twisted the box in my hands, weighing whether to open it or seal it away forever. Heart-pounding, I unscrewed the latch. The lid creaked open, a puff of stale air billowing out to greet me. Inside lay an assortment of items, an old locket, a brittle letter, and a small dusty vial. I gingerly lifted the locket. It felt warm against my skin, almost alive. My fingers traced the delicate design as I flipped it open. A sepia-toned photograph stared back at me, a young girl with wide, frightened eyes. She was familiar, but I couldn't quite place her. Then I noticed the letter. It was faintly yellowed, the ink smudged in places. As I unfolded it, I caught snippets of writing that chilled my bones. "They cannot stay, forever entangled. Set them free." The panic that had simmered all night boiled over. Who was she? What did this mean? And then the whispers transformed again, turning into a sharp, harmonious sound that filled my ears. The shadows around me seemed to deepen, coiling like serpents, and I was suddenly very aware of the weight of many gazes upon me. I felt a creeping sensation at my back, and instinctively I looked over my shoulder. A dark shape materialized beyond the flickering candlelight, a fleeting silhouette skimming the walls before it vanished again. My skin prickled with fear. Was it another spirit, or was it something worse? My breath quickened as the urgency to understand this mystery suffocated me. I needed answers, and I needed them fast. I stowed the letter and locket back in the box, not wanting to linger with whatever presence haunted this space. My eyes darted to the door, and I made a snap decision. I had to leave the room. I couldn't shake the feeling that the walls were closing in, that something was re-emerging. But just as I started for the exit, the candle flickered out, plunging me into darkness. My panic ignited. I stumbled forward, but without the light, everything felt alien. The shadows loomed large, and I could feel a rush of cold air and whispers swirling all around me. I needed to find a light. I needed to find a way out. I felt my way toward the door, my heart pounding in my chest, but the whispers grew louder, more insistent. "Stay," they beckoned. "You must stay." A new fear gripped me as I wrestled with the desperate urge to escape. I could feel eyes, unseen but pressing, and I wasn't alone in this room anymore. As I finally broke through the door, I found myself staring into an even darker corridor stretching before me. Everything felt off. I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever I had uncovered was just the beginning. The corridor felt heavier than the room. The darkness clung to me, wrapping around my body like a wet blanket. I hesitated at the threshold, straining my ears for any sound. The whispers had subsided, replaced by an unnerving silence that hummed with tension. "Think, think," I whispered to myself, trying to summon up the courage to move. I stepped forward, the wooden floor creaking beneath my weight. Each sound seemed magnified in the stillness. I reached out, my fingers brushing against the wall to guide me. The cold air biting at my skin added to my unease as I moved deeper into the corridor. I could feel an unsettling energy pooling behind me, like a shadow waiting to strike. Every instinct screamed at me to turn back, but I pressed on, fueled by a gnawing curiosity and a sheer desire to escape the unseen chasm of the room I just left. I reached a crossroad in the hall where the darkness seemed to deepen. To my left, I noticed a faint glimmer, a flicker of light. I quickened my pace toward it, relief surging when I realized it was coming from a door slightly ajar. Heart racing, I pushed it open, praying it led to safety or at the very least answers. The room was filled with a pale blue light, illuminating various objects scattered across a table. A tarnished mirror hung crookedly on the wall, reflecting fragments of the room. That familiar anxiety clawed at me again, but I steeled myself. Perhaps there was something here that could help me understand what was going on. As I stepped inside, the sense of warmth engulfed me, a stark contrast to the oppressive chill just outside. I took a breath, letting the light ground me. My eyes scanned the table, landing on an open journal. It looked old and was filled with handwriting, faded yet unmistakable. I picked up the journal, leafing through the pages hastily. I froze when I stumbled upon a drawing that seemed to depict the very room I was in. There were annotations in the margins, frantic scrawls speaking of the locket, the girl, and how one must be bound to break free. Confusion swirled in my mind. Then a sharp creaking sound broke my concentration. I looked toward the door. My stomach dropped as it slowly swung shut on its own, sealing me in. The light dimmed, flickering ominously, and the shadows morphed around me. I set the journal down, feeling the weight of something heavy in the air. This room was not safe either. I could sense it now, how the very walls were eyeing me, listening in. Then, I felt it again, the sensation creeping along my back. A familiar feeling of being watched. I turned slowly, my heartbeat pounding in my ears. In the far corner of the room, the shadow moved again, a shape coalescing into something more defined. My eyes widened as I realized it wasn't just a shadow, but a figure, waiting and watching. "Who's there?" I demanded, my voice steadier than I felt. The figure didn't respond, just stood there, shrouded in darkness apart from the glow of the light. Before I could process what was happening, it lurched forward, and with a swift movement, the room plunged back into darkness. I scrambled for the door, panic gripping me like a vice. I needed to get out, to get away from whatever was within those walls. But just as I gripped the door handle, I felt a cold hand wrap around my wrist. The bile rose in my throat as I gasped. I was trapped. The cold grip tightened around my wrist and instinct kicked in. I swung my other arm wildly, desperate to break free, and in that chaotic motion something unexpected happened. The whispering shadows seemed to recoil, almost as if my movement disrupted their hold. The momentary distraction broke the oppressive silence. "Let me go," I screamed, and with every ounce of strength, I jerked my arm free. I stumbled back into the room, breathless and shaking. The door swung wide as if offering an escape. I could hear the whispers intensifying again, a cacophonous chorus urging me to remain. I couldn't afford to listen. I sprinted through the door and back into the hallway, heart pounding in my chest as I ran blindly. I rushed past the peeled wallpaper and cluttered corners, all while the weight of unseen eyes and whispered names pressed down on me. But I didn't know where I was going. I just needed to escape. I barreled down the dark hall, passing 2 other doorways before skidding to a halt. There was a staircase ahead of me. I sprinted down, each step carrying me closer to the light filtering through the front door, but the shadows roiled and hissed around me like a storm gaining strength. "You will regret this," they seemed to whisper, echoing off the walls as I raced. As I reached the last step, the front door loomed. A quick glance back sent shivers down my spine. Figures emerged from the darkness, blurry outlines with angry, twisting faces that I could barely comprehend. I threw myself forward, grasping for the door handle just as something icy wrapped around my feet, heavy, constricting, pulling me back. "No!" I roared, channeling everything I had left into my fingers. I tugged, and in that fierce moment, the doorknob clicked open. Bursting through the door, I stumbled outside, gasping as fresh air met my face. I blinked against the light, nearly blinded by the brilliance of day after nights spent in darkness. But I didn't stop. I ran straight down the path, through the yard, and into the safety of the street. I didn't look back. The house loomed behind me, silent now, but I could feel the weight of it still pressing down from afar. The whispers faded as I put distance between myself and that cursed place, but uncertainty lingered. Had I truly escaped? Or was this just a reprieve before the shadows returned? Once I reached the end of the block, I paused, chest heaving, and turned around. I scanned the house one last time. The windows reflected normalcy. The front porch stood still, but I knew better. I felt it in my bones that something unspeakable was still alive within those walls. Days turned into weeks as I tried to forget. I moved to a different city. The sounds of my old neighborhood faded into the background. But I couldn't shake the memory of that figure. The girl in the locket, the stories written in the old journal, the whispered warnings. I pondered if they were shadows of the past trapped forever, or if the house still held its secrets, poised to strike at any moment. I still think about it sometimes. That seductive pull of curiosity battling against the instinct to flee. I never learned what truly happened to Ernest Blackwood, or what I disturbed in the depths of that old house. I wonder if the shadows are still watching, waiting, whispering names only they remember. But mostly I try not to think about it.